Hi, so today I'm going to be talking about the man who rigged for US elections. Yeah, four. So those would be the 1789 one, the first US election, then the one that re-elected George Washington, the one that elected John Adams, and the one that elected for the first time Thomas Jefferson. And probably would have been the second one, but he died before that one. And that is, of course, Alexander Hamilton. I know I've made a bunch of videos on him, but hey, he's really interesting and the musical's quite good, so why not? So let's start. This is really going to be an oversimplification because, well, it's four elections. I can't really, fit the details into all of them in just one video and not have it be, 3 hours long. So let's start with the first one. Now, this was uh, right after the Constitutional Convention happened, and the Constitution was already written, put in place, and the Federalist Papers were being written. And well, the country needed leadership. You just can't have anarchy. It needed someone to lead them, and the best way to do so is to make elections, to hold elections and have democracy win. So democracy would choose people would choose the politician who would be the leader. There were no parties, like as we know them today, there were no parties. Back then there were several factions, but this election, the first one, the eventually elected George Washington, didn't have the Federalist Party or the Democratic Republican Party. It just had independents, really. There were smaller parties, but the major contenders. It's not like today, like Democratic and Republicans. So let's just leave it there. And the frontrunner was George Washington. Literally, everyone who knew anything about politics would probably take a guess as to who would be president. George Washington, he had been the commander of the Continental Army during the war. He had been presiding over the Constitutional Convention. He'd been there for all the key moments, and had been an experienced soldier. So why not him? And well, he was eventually unanimous because votes. You could back then you'd vote twice, one for not first choice, but you vote for two people, and George Washington won eventually 100%. That doesn't mean that every single vote went to him. It's just that every single state voted for him at least once, if that makes sense. The other real frontrunner to this election was John Adams. And this is where it gets interesting. John Adams also had a really prominent background. He was a lawyer and also involved in the signing of the Declaration of Independence. He has been an ambassador to France, also Thomas Jefferson. But anyway, John Adams had also been to Amsterdam. He had actually met with King George. He had defended the British soldiers after the Boston Massacre. He was really prominent. You can't deny the importance John Adams had. However, John Adams, he's really interesting. And I know I do say that about everything, but his way of thinking, his personality was quite peculiar. Never mind the fact that any chance he got, he would go back to Massachusetts, where he was from. So he would just go back and not be really in the capital, New York, Philadelphia, for that long. And so those were the two major contenders. There were others, but it was really between George Washington and John Adams. Now, you're Alexander Hamilton. You've written 51 essays defending the U.S. Constitution, called the Federalist Papers, and you're a key politician, and if you endorse one candidate, well, not endorse it as such, but you help shape public opinion towards that one candidate, you're pretty much going to get that candidate elected because, he was prominent enough to do so. So let's just see from Hamilton's perspective both candidates. First, you have George Washington. He had been his own, commanding officer during the war. I mean, Hamilton had been Washington's aide-de-camp. He had been rather the leadership, and despite the fact that Hamilton kept demanding command, and when he got it, he actually screamed, "We got it, we got it." But he kept demanding command, and Washington would just, "No, you're gonna write stuff, you're gonna write my letter for me, and you're gonna be kind of my secretary, you're not gonna do anything else." Despite that hitting him quite hard and eventually causing him to quit as Washington's aide-de-camp, or aide-de-camp, however you pronounce that, he was familiar and he agreed with what Washington believed. However, John Adams had a different ideology and one that didn't exactly fit in with Hamilton. For example, Hamilton in the Constitutional Convention advocated he literally talked for 6 hours about his new form of government. He wanted he wanted presidency, but a hereditary one. So, say George Washington would be elected. When he died, the next elections would take place. And other proposed changes. John Adams, he was more, okay, we're gonna do things 4 years. He was not the voice of reason, but, different opinion, contrasting Hamilton. So, of course, Hamilton saw Adams as a danger to the country. And so, between the two most prominent candidates, he thought, hey, let's go with Washington. And he managed to convince the country to vote for Washington. And he did. Washington ended up winning the presidency. And as was the custom at the time, John Adams was his VP because he was the second person with most votes. And that is the first election, the 88. Yeah. Then we have the next one, 1792. Pretty much the same thing happened. Actually, George Washington didn't want to run for president. He didn't even want to run the first time. But he said, hey, the country needs leadership. It's literally like sending me to my grave. I'm not even kidding. He actually said that. Not in those words, but the gist. And yeah, it's what I have to do, but I'll do it. However, the second one, he saw no point. But here you have two politicians, Hamilton and Jefferson, hating each other's guts. I'm not even talking about a petty dispute. No, they literally hated each other's guts. You have the whole tension with Citizen Gannett. You have the ideology behind the French Revolution. It's kind of tied with Gannett. You have the different beliefs regarding the Constitution itself. So much so that they created the political parties, Hamilton being the head of the Federalist Party, and Jefferson being the leader of the Republican Party, later known as the Democratic Republican Party, later known as the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. I made a video on that, so if you want to check that out, you can. Anyway, they both knew that if Washington would step off and either of them could run, but probably John Adams would win, they didn't want that. They didn't want Adams as the president, so they convinced Washington to run again, and Washington got easily reelected. The second Washington election isn't really that interesting, so why not? And then by 1796, Washington said, enough. You guys are gonna have to, I don't think so, you're wrong. Hamilton actually gotten Jefferson to quit as Secretary of State, and he himself had quit as Secretary of Treasury a few months back in 1795. So, again, they didn't get along well. Hamilton and Jefferson, that is. So Jefferson said, okay, I'm going to run for president. And this time the two major candidates were John Adams from the Federalist Party and Thomas Jefferson from the Democratic Republican Party by this point. It was known as that. Well, Hamilton, he hated both men, but he just hated Jefferson more. He just hated towards Jefferson, his ideology, everything. Everything. Literally, Jefferson was the worst, the devil for Hamilton. And I've explained this before, but like the different ideologies. And from Jefferson's perspective, Hamilton was too pro-British. From Hamilton's perspective, Jefferson was too pro-French. And we know the history between the two countries. So it's only natural that two people who liked those countries respectively hated each other. And despite Hamilton hating John Adams, he was the lesser of two evils. So he managed to convince the public by writing letters and criticizing, say, Jefferson and in like different letters and stuff, open like newspaper articles or whatever. He got John Adams reelected. Now, by the time this election took place, it was a whole unobservation of certain documents explosion. So the Mariah Reynolds affair, it got public. That didn't help. But that didn't really affect the election. And John Adams got elected, although not unanimously, not like with Washington. But that did mean that Jefferson was now second with the most votes, so he was his VP. Then comes the last election I'm going to talk about, and that is the election of 1800. And this is not the juiciest one. The juiciest is the 1824. It's the one with JQA and Andrew Jackson. That one is pure gold. I'll probably make a video on it sometime because it's so good, so interesting, just amazing. One of the most interesting elections in U.S. history. But I digress. The election of 1800 was, pure chaos. John Adams pretty much had faded into no one really cares about him. So the two major contenders now were Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr. Well, it's literally the same case with the previous election. Hamilton hated Jefferson, but I literally saw a Hamilton quote. I can't remember it word for word, but I did say something like, I need to stop Burr, but not stop him from doing stuff. I need to stop him from advancing politically. Something along those lines. And we know, well, let's just say that Hamilton and Burr did not get along well. Spoiler alert, Burr did end up killing Hamilton in a duel in 1804. But anyway, Burr was of the ideology, by the way, both men were from the Democratic Republican parties, both of them. They were both Southern as well. And, well, Burr was more of a, okay, I am just going to step back, see what the public want, see what's right for the moment, and then say my beliefs. Jefferson was more, hey, this is me. I mean, the guy literally wrote the Declaration of Independence and invented the swivel chair, so you can kind of get the idea of what type of guy he was. And, well, to To sum it up, because I'll probably make a special on U.S. elections, not in not so long a time, because they're really interesting. So I'm not gonna get into that much detail, but same thing. Well, Jefferson was a lesser of two evils, so he published several pamphlets trying to convince the public. And now this gives politician gives Hamilton by this point, 1800. Mm, he was down on his luck. He just wasn't prominent at all. Still had some pull, but not the pull he had in 1790, 88 or 92 or even 96. They still managed to get Jefferson elected, and well, Burr being his VP. And well, the next elections were in 1804 in, I don't know the exact month because now they're in November, but back then I don't remember. That rhymed. November. Anyway, by the time the elections themselves were held, Hamilton had been killed on July 11th, 12th. I don't remember the exact. I don't know the exact moment he died. I mean, I think he died on the 12th, but he got shot on the 11th. And also, Burr had come to disgrace because it got public that he had been the man who killed Hamilton. And even though it was legal, the duels were legal, he never got prosecuted. His political career was obliterated. But yeah, and so he was VP, but Thomas Jefferson said, I'm gonna change stuff, I'm not gonna make it so the second person with the most votes is VP. I'm gonna make it that they need to vote for the VP. And considering Jefferson did not like Burr, I'm not surprised that Burr got kicked out of office and another guy came in as new VP under Jefferson himself. But of course, Hamilton wasn't there to see this, although he probably would have liked the fact that Burr got kicked out of office. But yeah, that is it. That is the 4 elections Hamilton rigged. He didn't rig them per se, but And I'm gonna leave it there. So, because there's not much else to say. And yeah, I hope you liked it. I hope you found it interesting. And thank you for watching. Bye.